Hello friends, and welcome back to another Blind Date with a Book and Blind Date with a Bake video. This is number 8 of 12, which is absolutely crazy. We're already mostly through the year, which is a little shocking, a little crazy, a little exciting maybe, but truly I'm impressed. I'm so happy with myself, and I'm gonna pat myself on the back a little bit because this was a very daunting project from the beginning of the year. And the fact that I've actually kept up with it and gotten 8 videos done and 8 bakes done and 8 books done is just super, super exciting. This was a little bit of a challenge for me in the sense of something that was a little bit out of my comfort zone, but I've had a lot of fun. So if you've joined me through the time of doing this 12 blind dates with a bake and 12 blind dates with the books, then thank you so much for joining me. I've really loved doing these videos. It's really brought me out of my comfort zone with some of the bakes I've done, but also some of the books I've read, and it's been just really exciting. But enough of that. Let's get to actually the point of this video. And if you were here last week, you knew that I was going to be reading. Actually, let's go ahead and just rewind and I'll show you the unpacking of the Blind Date with a Book and Blind Date with a Bake and what we were going to be doing in August. So let's go ahead and jump back to the end of July. Okay, let's go ahead and right here. Okay, that one. What is it? Oh! Oh no. It only has an Italian name. Sablés Bretons. I feel like I have to put a treat on. Oh, okay. This one it is. Okay, this one. Ooh, okay. This one's one of the books I actually bought in Puerto Rico. I am quite interested in this. So you saw that I was supposed to be reading Velorio by Xavier Navarro Aquino and also baking these interesting little biscuits that I did bake, but I kind of messed up, but I'll explain later. So I'm gonna say I've completed this month, which I have. I've finished this book and I finished the bake, but I have a lot to say and a lot to express. But before I get too far, I do want to do a little tiny baking montage of these cute little biscuits because I want to show what happened before I actually explain what happened. So let's go ahead and pop into the kitchen and I'm going to read you the synopsis of this book so you know what we'll be talking about today if you would like to know. In the wake of Hurricane Maria, survivors search for hope on an island torn apart by a natural disaster and human violence. Camila is haunted by the death of her sister Marcel, who was caught by the mudslide during a hurricane. Unable to part with Marcel, Camila carries her to the supposed utopia of Memoria, where an idealistic yet troubled cult leader who lured the young with promising of paradise. Alongside a young man Bayfish and tough Team Moravari, different inhabitants of Memoria will navigate a false prophet's rise and will need to confront his violent authoritarian impulses in order to reclaim their home. When leaving for something different, there is excitement, at least initially, for a new world. Cristobal Colon is not my father, and leaders old and new create the same old new pains. Uria loves fire. I worry in order to set the rules for a new place. A sacrifice is needed because everything new is born from tears. You lose connection to the island and you learn how things used to be before everyone lived virtual. I live in the rose and in the sea. Floating globes that service connection orbit towns, and many people in cars cling desperate to old reception towers. Paper cash only lasts in temporary space, and it all burns. I live in the rose and in the sea. A beast grew inside leaders and hearts to cover bodies in the graves in a new part of the everyday. Only when. Stock runs low, I dream to drift on a sea, but only if it leads me back home. Ura loves fire. I live in the rose and in the sea. So these biscuits are actually extremely easy, and the fact that I messed them up is absolutely shocking for me. I have to admit, I got distracted by reading something on my phone and forgot to pull them out of the oven. So that's why they are way darker than they should be. I'm absolutely shocked with how dark they got. But the bottoms look really nice. This is just the egg wash and the milk wash that was on top. And I'm wondering if I should have watched it like closer, or maybe there's too much milk in mine because I didn't put 2 egg yolks. I put 1 egg yolk and more milk. So maybe that was my problem. But as you probably saw, the edges of my cookie are almost black. So that part is quite bitter. However, I am quite surprised. The middles aren't bad. They're a little, like, you know that flavor before you have burnt flavor? Like that really crispy flavor? They're like that. So it's almost like brown butter. And I'm going to say it's a brown butter flavor, a brown buttered flavor and not burnt. Because if they're burnt, I'm going to be sad. But to be honest, the cookie is really basic. It's a really easy cookie. I can see why most of Forties liked this recipe, and it's considered more of like a little like treat recipe when you may not have a lot of money and stuff like that. So it is a really basic butter, sugar, flour, salt cookie. It's easy to make if you watch the oven, and they're perfect with tea or coffee. So I find them really delightful. They're really easy to eat as well. These ones are a little bit saltier, so I might have added too much salt. But they're good. They're very buttery. And I feel like if I would have been better at keeping my eye on the oven, I would have had a better bake on top. But the bottoms really are just perfect. It's just the top that got a little bit too dark, which is unfortunate, but sometimes bakes don't always go as we planned them. But they're not bad. I actually think they're good to bake. I think if you're looking for a really great tea cookie or coffee cookie, then I would make these. So that's all I have to say about them. There's not much more to say other than they're really basic, delicious, basic cookie. Basic. Yep. Okay. Not basic. Before I get into what this book is about, I kind of want to explain how I came about this book. Back in 2023, I believe, in April or May, I can't remember. Misha and I went to Puerto Rico for a friend's wedding. They were getting married there. The husband is from Puerto Rico, and it was really beautiful. So Misha and I, it's about a 15-hour flight from us with layovers. So we decided, instead of just going straight there and staying there for a day or 2 days for the wedding, we were going to actually make it part of our vacation. So we planned, I think, 2.5 weeks in Puerto Rico, and we were going to go ahead and drive around the island. So we rented a car and we drove around the island. Neither of us knew very much about Puerto Rico other than the Hurricane Maria that hit Puerto Rico back in 2017, I believe, and also that it's a territory of the U.S. So that's pretty much what my knowledge was of Puerto Rico before going there back in 2023. I can't remember if it was 22 or 23. I believe it was 23. And we went to Puerto Rico. We landed 2 weeks before the wedding, and we had 2 weeks to drive around the island. And we didn't really know what to expect. We had looked up a couple things. I booked most of our stays through Airbnb because a lot of the hotels were still closed down or not open. We were also going, I think, during more of the off season, at least to the rest of the island, what we thought as off season at least. And so I don't need to hold up the book while I'm telling you the story. I ended up doing a whole video on Puerto Rico. So if you actually want to see what we did in Puerto Rico, I'll put it in the description or the comment below. I'll add it as a tagged comment. But so we went to Puerto Rico, and it was really lovely. It was absolutely gorgeous. It was nothing what Misha and I were expecting. We stayed in a tree house. We went into the rainforest, and there were these frogs that were called cookie frogs. And the reason they're called cookie is because the sound they make sounds like cookie. It was really, really cute. I actually have the frog right here on my window. So this was from Puerto Rico, and this whole experience was really breathtaking. And as we decided, so we landed on the island, and instead of staying in San Juan, we decided that we were going to land and start our road trip immediately so that way we could get to the wedding back in San Juan before the wedding started. So we started going, if you're looking at San Juan, like if it's the map directly in front of you, San Juan's here, if not San Juan, if you're looking at Puerto Rico as a whole and San Juan's here, we decided that we were going to go this direction. So we went left to like the caves, and then we traveled down into I think we went to the most northwestern point of Puerto Rico, and then we traveled down south. And as we were traveling, we had very many different experiences. And through those experiences, we kind of saw what happened, not necessarily what happened, but kind of the aftermath of Hurricane Maria. And it was shocking how much was still needing to be worked on and what was happening to the towns. And so we went down south to like there were these like giant resorts down in the southern part of Puerto Rico. I can't remember the names of the towns now, but in that area, all of the large resorts were closed, and we couldn't figure out if they were closed because it was off season or because they were still being worked on. And we talked to somebody, and they said, yeah, a lot of the resorts are still being worked on, being repaired. And that's so crazy to think about. That was more than 8 years ago now, and they still are trying to rebuild their island. And the more we traveled, the more things we got to experience. And I must say, everybody in Puerto Rico, they were so lovely. Everybody was so welcoming and so kind. They wanted to share ideas with us and share their experiences. We went to this little tiny, itty bitty tiny off the road like restaurant because we were starving and we couldn't find any food. And they had, we were like, hey, just like whatever you have is great. We were just hungry. And so they gave us a bunch of different types of foods. They gave us like a stew, some rice, some fried plantains. And oh my goodness, those fried plantains were delicious. And they gave us a bunch of other little things. And they were just so friendly and so kind. And we decided to continue on our travels. We went back through the east side of Puerto Rico, and we went up to the mountains again, and then we went back to San Juan. And before the wedding, we had the opportunity to actually do a couple like tours through San Juan. So we did an architecture tour, which was really fascinating because Puerto Rico is just kind of a mishmash of all of these different cultures in the sense of the buildings. Like Puerto Rico has its own culture, but the buildings and the architecture are very different. You have French, you have Spanish, you have American, you have German. You have all these different types of architecture, and it was so cool to walk around with somebody who has passion for those things and wanted to talk to us about those things. But during that time as well, we were learning about what happened during Hurricane Maria and how they were without power, without fresh water, without food, how a lot of families were just struggling for basic necessities. And so it was just very, very shocking to kind of hear about this because I heard about the Hurricane Maria coming through, but I wasn't, I guess, paying attention close enough to what was actually happening, which is on me. I should have been knowing what's happening in the world around me. So we learned a little bit more about Puerto Rico. We learned about the history. We learned about the history like way, way, way back before the U.S. was the U.S. And it was just so fascinating. It was really, really, really wonderful. So if you haven't had a chance to visit Puerto Rico, I actually highly recommend it. And I would recommend not staying in San Juan. I would recommend renting a car and just driving around and seeing how beautiful that island is. They have so many wonderful things. They have a wonderful culture, and they were just, I can't tell you how lovely they really were. So while we were there, we also had like this urge to, well, this has been kind of an urge that we've had for a while. So because we're reading a lot more, we also want to pick up more books that are based or written by authors that are in that area. So for example, we were in Puerto Rico, so we wanted to find authors who were Puerto Rican who wrote stories. They didn't have to take place in Puerto Rico specifically, but it was really lovely just to support the authors that are from that island and from that territory and from that culture. So we went to a bookstore, we found a couple books, and one of those books was Velorio. I didn't know much about this book. I actually didn't know anything about this book other than it was taking place during Hurricane Maria or right after Hurricane Maria and kind of what was happening. I thought this was more of like a fictional novel, but it's not. It's there are parts of it as fictional and parts of it that's not. And I was very happy to read parts. I was very happy to realize it was not completely true, because it would have been really, really tough. So before I go further, I want to first explain, if you haven't been watching these videos, I have two parts. I have a non-spoiler section, and then I have a spoiler section. This section is going to be non-spoiler. I'll go ahead and kind of warn you for the spoiler section, and then if you want to, before you leave, you can jump to the very end of the movie, the video, and watch what my next book and my next bake are going to be. But this part right here is going to be non-spoiler, so I'm not going to spoil anything. However, with that being said, there's not much I can say about this book that's in this section, because we kind of jump quickly into the entire story. But let's go ahead and try. So this is non-spoilers. So Velorio is a story about Puerto Ricans and kind of what happened to the island after Hurricane Maria hit. We follow 6 different perspectives, which was kind of surprising and quite interesting, because we get 6 very fascinating perspectives of very different types of people in a sense. And the first perspective we start off is Camilla, I believe. We call her Cammy for most of the book. And it's this first chapter is just really shocking. We have this young girl, we don't know her age, but we do know she's young, and she is experiencing Hurricane Maria and then the after fact, and we're watching what's happening through her eyes and the effects of it with her sister and her mom and her home and her town, and then the after effects and how it not just physically affects her in the sense that she has no food and water in that sense, but also mentally due to what happened during Hurricane Maria. So we kind of jump in immediately. I mean, this is not a spoiler because it's literally the first sentence, but I'm going to read the first sentence. It wasn't until after I dug out her body that I learned to love my sister, Maricel. So, yeah. We start this book off in such a heavy space. I thought, okay, we're going to save that sentence and we're going to kind of like move in a different direction. I don't really know what direction I was thinking of, but we didn't. And we kind of feel that heaviness throughout the entire story. And I ended up watching interview with Xavier, and he talks about how this is kind of a retelling of Lord of the Flies. And once I heard that after I read the book, I was like, oh, okay. So you can kind of imagine this as a retelling of Lord of the Flies. You're going to get a lot of people trying to survive. And it's 6 perspectives of trying to survive after Hurricane Maria. We see a lot of devastation. We see a lot of pain. We see a lot of hunger and thirst and fear, and it's just it's not what I was expecting, and I don't know what I was expecting. I knew Hurricane Maria was really terrible. I mean, even after seeing what happened to the island many years later, this book was just So I liked the story. But this is also a story about fear and the human reaction to fear and the inability to function almost, and what fear can make us do in the negative sense. And also the resilience of humans, but also how broken humans are and how messed up we can be and how destructive we can be. And so it's really interesting because I was reading some comments, because I love reading comments after I finish a book, and I love reading about like what other people thought. And a lot of people were upset because they're hoping this book was going to be a book about resilience, but it's not. It's not a book about resilience. It's just a book about life in the sense of a crappy situation that leads to crappy situations. It's really, it's amazing what these six people did and how they got from one place to another and how they interacted with each other. And we do see them cross paths a little bit, but it's not about them coming together and like learning to move forward and create a new society. It's really just trying to figure out what in the world is going on and how to just function and survive in a world that feels almost completely lost and broken, from a world that had cell phones and internet and TV and radio and food and water and everything, to a world that has nothing. And it's just really shocking. If you liked Lord of the Flies, I actually think that was a great way to explain this book, because then like I said, after I heard that, I was like, oh my goodness, this makes sense now. So if you like Lord of the Flies, or not just like Lord of the Flies, but if you found it as a fascinating story, I wouldn't say people like go back and be like, oh, Lord of the Flies is the best book in the world and my favorite book and I love it so much. I think it's more of one of those books that you read and you're like, oof. If you like those types of books, then I think this would be a really good book for you to read. It's not for everybody. There are some trigger warnings of brutality, of gruesome grossness, of animal brutality, of pain, of suffering, of a lot. It's just, there's a lot, and it can be pretty gruesome at points. So I don't recommend it for everybody, but I do think it's not a bad story to read, because it also kind of reminds us that we are human and not, unfortunately, humans are scary sometimes. And this kind of shows us multiple different stories and multiple different perspectives. And I know I'm kind of all over the place, but I'm trying not to give away anything in the story, because I think one of the reasons I loved it, or not loved it, but I liked it so much, was because I had to put the pieces together as I was reading it. I didn't know what I was going to be expecting. And I think you need to go in this book not knowing what you're going to be expecting, really. But now I can't remember what I was going to say. I just think it's a book worth reading if you like kind of learning about human reaction and human choice, if that makes sense. I remember what I was going to say. It does have kind of, we follow a little bit, like there are points of government, of the the fact that the government failed. And we also have cults. So that's also a very fascinating, like, kind of structure, is looking at how the government had failed the situation, and then how people kind of form these cults and try to find comfort in being with each other, even if you feel like it could be negative. And then you also have then the outcome of, does that start forming its own government in a way or not, or what ends up being kind of the outcome there. So I do like it. I did find it really enjoyable. I can't give it a star rating. I normally don't do star ratings in these reviews, but I did really like it. It's a book that's going to go back on my bookshelf, and I would imagine I could reread this again in the future. But I'm also not somebody who reads books like this very often. These books are very hefty for me, especially when we follow human error. Those types of books can be hefty for me and kind of show me a picture. I know this exists in this world, but as a cozy, I live in my own cozy bubble type of person, I try to follow very positive and very just light-hearted things, and to pick up a book that really reminds me that, oh crap, our world is not always very nice and cozy, it can be really hard. It's not like I don't like reading these books, it's just I have to put them a little distanced apart. So I do recommend this for anybody who likes books that are about that are in the area of Lord of the Flies, that are about human error or human kind of crisis, or anybody who just wants to read just a really weird and screwed up book. Yeah. That's kind of my non-spoiler section. I know that's not very much, but honestly, this is not something I can recommend to everybody. But I do think the writing was really nice and well done. I do think the perspectives of the characters kind of got jumbled sometimes. I sometimes had to jump back to the front page of the cover or the front page of the chapter to make sure who I was reading about. But for the most part, I knew who I was reading and what perspective I was reading. I saw somebody complain about grammatical errors, not complain, just mention, I guess, about grammatical errors, but you also have to remember that Puerto Rico, the first language isn't technically English, it's Spanish, and so they have their own, this is written in a second language, so freaking great job, Xavier. And honestly, I didn't notice any of them. I didn't notice one grammatical error. The writing was really well done. I found it really beautifully written, even during the really dark and gruesome parts. It's not that those were beautiful, but Xavier wrote them in a way where there was a need for those words sometimes to prove the point of humans. So I think this is a book worth reading. It's not for everybody. Check out the content warnings for this, please, before you pick it up. But do pick it up if you want to, because I think Xavier, this is his debut novel too, so I think that's fantastic. So I think Xavier deserves more support and love for his book, because he did really, really a great job for a debut novel and a story that's just really hard and not easy to tell. And I think it's also nice to know a little bit more about the world going on around us sometimes. So that's everything. I'm so sorry it's really short, but sometimes short is sweet. Not this book. This book wasn't sweet. It's short, but not sweet. So if you don't want to listen to spoilers, no worries. I would recommend you read it before you listen to spoilers anyways. So if you don't want to listen to spoilers, go ahead and jump down to the bar below the chapters and skip to the very end so you know what book and bake we're going to be baking next week. I only have 4 books left. We see them right here. So I only have 4 books left, so that's pretty exciting. And I'm looking forward to what's going to be coming next. So if you want to check that out, go ahead and jump to the chapters below and meet me at the end. If you want to listen to spoilers and you've read this book, fantastic. Actually, if you've read this book, go ahead and put like a palm tree. I think there's palm tree emojis down below. Put a palm tree emoji down below, because I'm curious as to how many people have read this one. Because I wasn't able to find a lot of reviews about it, surprisingly. So if you have read it, or if you want to read it, like, do a heart and a palm tree, maybe. I don't know. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about spoilers in 3, 2, 1, spoiler time. So, I don't even know where to get started with this book, honestly. So I have marked a couple sections in this book, I've marked a lot of sections in this book. And all of the orange tabs here are where things were so violent and so gruesome that I had to put a little marker in there. I mean, come on. We start this book off with Cammy, who ends up talking about her sister being dead, just in the first sentence. And then we end up finding out that she cuts off her sister's pinky and puts it in her pocket so that way she can carry her sister around with her. And it just continues to get darker from there. She isn't able to handle her grief and come to terms with her grief and come to terms that her sister is gone. So when she's like with her sister, she's unburied her sister from the earth. The mudslide came and wiped out her sister's room, and her sister was in there and died during the mudslide. And the mom's a little bit gone. I mean, I can't blame her. She's now lost a daughter, and her world is just falling apart. So we have Cammy, who's just trying to figure out how to kind of move forward, and she's not dealing with her grief at all. And so she ends up carrying around her sister's dead body and she decides that she's going to go to this area that she's heard about that's supposed to be taking care of people and has food and water, and it's kind of creating a new citizenship. It's creating a new civilization. And she says, "Okay, great, sister. You're gonna get on my back, and we're gonna walk there." And that's where we start. This young girl, we don't know her age at the time, but she's young, and she's carrying her dead sister on her back, and she's going to go try to find the civilization so she can take care of her sister and herself. That's where we start. And holy moly, that was a hefty chapter. Oh my goodness. And it was dark, and it was messy and gross, and it was hard to read because it was just, I didn't know what was going to happen next. It was really just woof. And there are multiple lines in this book that I found really beautiful, and I've marked a couple of them. Like this one, for example, at the end of this chapter, at the end of the first chapter with Cami, it says, "I saw us all suffering in Utado, and I imagined everyone in our entire island suffering too. All of us wishing for something different, how we straddled onto hope, how we walked as though we were ghosts, and all that was to come, all that we dreamed through towards something new felt necessary." I do apologize if I'm pronouncing the towns wrong. I'm not great with Spanish. So we start off with this very dark thing, but we just continue to have positive pieces just come out here and there. These like positive pieces of light almost, but they're very far in between. The next chapter is Bayfish. He ends up being another one of our characters, and Bayfish describe him as a shrimp because he has like texture on his skin. It ends up being like tufts of hair or something like that. I'm not exactly sure, but he was abandoned by his mother, grew up on the streets, and was found by somebody else who decided to take care of him a little bit. Bayfish is friends with two of our other characters that come up. One is Banto. Banto is like his best friend, his best buddy. They have gone through everything together. They support each other, and they're like this. They're really, really close. And then we have another one of our main characters, point of perspective. Yeah. Chio, and Chio is probably my favorite character. I really, really loved Chio. I think that he is kind of that grounding thing I needed in this story, and I think if we didn't have Chio, I would have felt like it was too heavy. So Chio is like a saving point in this story for me. And we follow the movement of these now 4 characters. So Chio, Cami, Bayfish, and Banto. So we follow those 4 characters and what's happening kind of with the after effects. At the end of Bayfish's chapter, we also get like this piece of light of laughter and camaraderie, and it really, really quickly goes to 2 people are floating in the water and they're dead. I'm not surprised. Thousands, I think 3,000, if I read it correctly, 3,000 people died. And if I have that number wrong, I'm so sorry, but too many people died. That's the main point of this. It's just too many people died during this hurricane. And so I wouldn't be surprised if this is something that people really did see, and I cannot imagine. I just can't. So we're already getting heavier. We have then 2 of our other characters, Mora Vivi. I think she goes by Mori. And then Mori's friend, who is, I don't believe we ever get Mori's friend's perspective. And I can't remember Mori's friend's name. Damiris. So Mori and Damiris are also friends, and they're traveling to this sanctuary that everybody's finding. And Mori hates the government. She's just very anti-government, control. And I end up finding that really interesting during this book because, like I was kind of talking about in my non-spoilers section, we have the failment. I don't know why I keep saying that. The government failing, and then we have this cult situation and the idea of if a cult becomes like so controlling or dictating, does that end up being kind of functioning as a miniature government at some point? So it's an interesting idea and topic. So we follow Maury and Dami. I'm going to call her Damaris? I don't know. So we follow them working their way to this citizenship as well, because they have seen and gone through also a lot of negative stuff. I was trying to figure out if they were together during this whole entire story. I'm not sure, actually. And I don't know how old they are. That was the other thing, is a lot of people, we don't know the ages of them other than Chio. Chio, we do know that he's quite older. Not sure how much older, but he's, I wanted to say excessively older. He is way older than a lot of the other characters. He's probably in his 70s or older, my guess. And then we have those two kind of, Demiri and Maury. We have them working their way to the citizenship. I know I repeated that again. And they have witnessed a lot of really, really bad things. They can't find gas. They are starving. They need fresh water. They're not getting fresh water. They've seen, and this is also when we get introduced to the Reds. And the Reds are part of the civilization, and the Reds are trying to recruit new people to join the civilization. But the Reds are also just very gross. Not in the sense of how they look, but how they act. They bark like dogs, they growl at people, and we end up witnessing them violently hurting an older man because they cut him to steal water. So it's a big thing. So this is kind of our first perspective of also the Reds, and we are already getting a negative connotation to the Reds. And so Maury is working on getting them to the civilization. They also, we also do this one chapter, and I found this one chapter really fascinating because it talks about they witnessed people flying at the very beginning of the chapter. And this mention of flying gets mentioned 3 times in this chapter. And it's literally people jumping out of windows because they can't survive in this world. But in Maury and Demiri's eyes, these people are flying away. And I just found that really fascinating to explain the situation like that, because you know what's happening. But in the explanation from Maury's perspective, they're seeing these people just fly away. And I just found that so raw and uncomfortable, but also written so beautifully, which is so confusing. And then our last person we have is the leader of the Reds. And his name is, I cannot pronounce his name. They call him Yura. Yura, there you go. They call him Yura. And Yura is a very bad person. And it's not that we don't get to know this at the very beginning and we have to learn it at the very end. And this is something I actually really liked about this part of the story, is we learned that the Reds and this Yuri person are terrible people at the very start. And we know that our main characters, our characters are headed to his civilization. He's the one that makes the civilization. And they're walking into his control and his terribleness and his disgustingness and his utter just inhuman, ugh. I can't put my feelings I had for this character into words, because thinking about what he did in the story just breaks my heart. And it's not just what he did at the end of the story, but it's also something he does at the beginning of the story. He's just a terrible human being. And he encourages the Reds, who we all find out that they're young boys. They're young boys that lived on the street and just needed a place, and he brought them in. And you think, oh, Yuri's good because he's saving these boys. He saved Bayfish, and he saved these boys and gave them life and gave them a place to feel comfortable. But he's growing a pack of almost wild dogs that just destroy everything and are inhuman. So we follow Yuri. We find we learn a little bit about Yuri and what he's doing. He's stolen all the gasoline, or he's stealing the gasoline from the government, and he's hoarding it, and then he's only giving it out to the people who can trade with him. And he acts like he's doing it as a gift, and then it ends up being like this big thing throughout the entire story. So we follow all of our characters traveling to Yuri's like civilization and his perfect little area, and I can't remember what it's called. I think it's almost like Meloria. Velorio is the name of the book, and I think it's close to Veloria. I think it's Meloria or something like that. Memoria. Haha, it's on the back of the book. It's Memoria. And so they're all on their way to Memoria to find sanctuary, food, water, and everything like that. And when they all get there, it's kind of like we jump a little bit back and forth between different perspectives of how they get there, who they meet on their way there. And Yura has created this kind of opinion that not living on this little civilization, this little like homestead he's built, puts you in danger, because you don't have security, you don't have safety, you don't have food, you don't have water if you're not there. And I think because he was so focused on the younger generation and the children and the young adults that needed just a place because they didn't know how to survive on their own, he only allowed those people into his little sanctuary. And that, I think, depicted how people were reacting. So there were quite a few things like further in the book where Yura decides that they're going to have like ceremonies and celebrate Yura and Memoria and like whatever he's been doing, because he's just amazing. And you can tell I try to smile during these videos, but I think Yura doesn't make me smile. So we follow these people trying to do, or not trying to do, but Yura is demanding that they do these ceremonies and celebrations over him and Memoria, which is he's built. And they are required to express their love and gracious, or their love and their gratitude towards Yura and Memoria. And if you're not doing it well enough, then the Reds like bully you, and the Reds like encourage violence and hate and disgustingness. And it's just a lot. It's really just a lot. And so we see people die. We see people be lost in a world that doesn't offer care. Cammy, the person that's carrying her sister on her back, she gets brought to Memoria with Yura. Yura picks her up and her sister up, who's dead. Again, she's dead. And brings her to Memoria. And at one point, when some of our other characters, like Bayfish and Banto, are there, Yura says, we're going to just take her sister away and throw it away, because we don't want that around anymore. It's attracting bugs and insects and things. And Cammy, sorry. Cammy is unable to grieve. She hasn't grieved yet. And so in that moment where Yuri takes away her sister, she's just broken. And she tries to end herself in a way where I can try to say it without saying words that I should not say. And so we see Cammy just falling apart, and the others, Mori and Demiria and Banto and Chio and Bayfish are all trying to support her and show her love and care, and she's just a broken human being. And we see the growth between these characters. They're not all together at the same time, which is really fascinating, but their life ends up being kind of in this area, and we see how it's affecting them and how they go through different things. And at one point, Cammy is so broken, she decides to walk back to her home, and we learn a little bit more about her home and how her mom just disappeared. That's why she left. And we find out that she's younger than 16 because her older sister, Mari, her older sister Mari, who died, just turned 16. So we know this girl is young. And she's seen so much. She's gone through so much. And we understand why she can't grieve correctly, because she doesn't know what, she doesn't understand it. She doesn't understand these feelings. And so we have Mari go back to her home and just decide that she's just going to end things. And Banto, Demiria, I probably said her name multiple different ways. Demirius? Sorry. Dama? Demirius. And Mori all go search for her. And they find her and they need to give her food and water and help her get better. So they get her back into the town, and they're all trying to figure out why they keep going back to this town. And there is this idea that I think as humans, we crave to be around other people for security. And what do we do in a situation where the only thing that gives us security is something so bad? And I don't know. I don't know what I would do in that situation. I would like to say, hey, I would leave that situation. I wouldn't have gone there in the first place. But if you have no food and water and security and gas and everything else, what do you do? And so it's really interesting to kind of see this perspective. And this is where I'm like, oh, okay, Lord of the Flies makes way more sense now. And so in the end, that's the end, in the sense. Like, Banto dies a very gruesome and unforgivable death, and that's one of the reasons why Yuri, what we saw was so terrible at the beginning, and so are his reds, but also just the end, he's terrible all through and through. At one point, like, we see that he feels guilty for Banto, but I don't care. He doesn't deserve to feel, he doesn't deserve my feeling of feeling bad for him, because I don't. He's done something terrible, and I can't imagine. It's just terrible. He's just a terrible human being, and unfortunately we have those people in this world. And so in the end, this is kind of hard to do to do spoilers, because there's just a lot of little things that happen, and I feel like it's really important to read read the entire book, because I was reading another comment and somebody said they skimmed through parts of this book, and I found that really difficult to do, because each part of this book is needed to be able to grow that character or change that character or impact the story or move the story forward, even though the story doesn't move very forward. But we end up needing those little things so that way we can actually have our end idea come together. And I feel like if you skim parts of the story, you're missing big things you actually need. But in the end, Chio has been sent out to sea by Yura to live or to fish for his colony, and his colony thinks that he's doing this for them, and really they're not seeing that he's sending this person out to die in the middle of the ocean. And Chio just kind of accepts it, and I found that so hard. Because Chio was my favorite character, he was what was pushing the story forward for me, and to lose Chio, it was just devastating. But that's when things start happening really fast. So Chio gets sent away. Banto, Mori, and Demirius find Cammy, and they're bringing her back. Bayfish has just lost all hope and care, and he just is so angry with Yura, even though Yura was the one that like saved him as a child and gave him hope and love and care, love. But Bayfish hates him, and so when he went to kind of lash back when he sent Chio out, because Chio was also really close to Bayfish. It was like a father figure or like a fishing figure to him. The Reds or Yura, I can't remember who, broke his jaw. And so like it's just negative after negative after negative after negative. And that's when Bento decides to fight back, and Yura just beats him so badly to the point of there's just no coming back. And instead of just leaving it, they decide to kill him in the end. And that affects Yura, or that affects Bayfish, and Bayfish can't handle this, and Mori ends up having to carry the group together and push the group together. And then we see Cammy kind of coming in and pushing the group forward, and we see this happening in the sense of everybody's trying to support each other in a very broken society and broken world, and nobody knows how to support each other. And in the end, Maury lights it all on fire. And I loved that part. I loved that part so much. And I don't wish that on anybody, but I cannot express how much Yura just made me angry and disgusted. So, they lit it on fire, Yura died, and we see Bayfish separating from Cami and Mora and Demirius, and Bayfish just needs to kind of go figure out his own life, and these three go in their own direction, and this is the end. The fact that this is the end was kind of shocking because we kind of end. Like, there's no happy ending. There's no, the world gets better, the government came and saved them all. And I think that's why a lot of people were shocked and kind of uncomfortable with the ending, because there's no like growth in the sense of like things get better. It's things are crap, things get really crappy, things are crap. And it's just so heartbreaking. And so I think this is why this book is so hard to read, is because there's no positive outcome. And what's the point? The point is that humans are sometimes really broken, and I think that's why this is one of those books that, or this types of books I can't read very often, because it's not a shining light on all humans. I think humans, for the most part, we're all lovely, and we try to spread love and care and kindness and all these other things, but this one was just, these types of books remind me that there are really terrible people in the world, unfortunately, and you can't always forget about them. And this book kind of brings it back out and says, hey, there's terrible people. There are good people. Bayfish was a good person. Maury was a good person. She was violent and aggressive, but she was a good person. Demirius was also a good person. So was Cami. Chio was also good. Some of the people they met on their way were also good. There are good lines in this book, in the sense beautiful lines. There are moments of beauty in this story, but there's also death and unsavoriness and sadness and heaviness. I hope you enjoyed it and enjoyed this little talk. I know it wasn't a positive one. Like I said, this is not what I was expecting, but let's go ahead and pick out our new bake and our new book for next month. The month of September. How exciting, September. I have to go get my baking book, so I'll be right back. Okay, let's move on to the positive note of picking our next bake and our next book. We have 4 books left here, which is pretty exciting. But let's go ahead and choose the bake first, because I love doing a bake, and I'm kind of hoping we have something a little bit more fall-y. I don't really think this book is depicted on different seasons. It does have some holiday bakes, which I'm hoping we don't get, but it's better than probably like summer bake. Any bake is good. I have my finger already in one, not because I chose it, like because I knew about it, but because that's where my finger was sitting, which is this, oh, okay. Well, it's a nectarine cake. It's a nectarine and amaretto cake. Very few things taste summer to me more than nectarines. I really love the fact that I was saying something folly and we get nectarines, but that's not a bad thing. Nectarines are on sale right now. I have to make this at the end of the month. We'll figure it out. In Italy, we produce some very fine ones. So juicy and sweet, amaretto loves nectarines, and I hope you will love this cake. Well, no matter, it looks very, very tasty. And it sounds like I might have to get some nectarines and maybe freeze them just in case. But absolutely deliciously looking cake. Yeah. So we're making a nectarine and amaretto cake. And for our book, we have 4 books here. And I'm trying to figure out There's not very many left. Do I want something thinner or thicker? I kind of want to do this one because I haven't done this one yet. Is that weird? It's really small. I think I'm gonna get, oh, okay, I'm gonna do this one. My brain says do this one, so I'm gonna do this one. It's very thin, it's very large. Let's see what it is. Okay, this is the front of it right here. Ooh, okay. Kill Your Darlings. So this is, oh man, okay, this is going to be really nice actually. So this is a graphic novel, and it's supposed to be really, really well done. There are a couple graphic novels I really like, and I think this one's going to be absolutely perfect for the season, especially since I have to maybe read it a little bit faster so I can make sure I bake the nectarine cake before nectarines are out of season. So let me tell you what this book is about, or this graphic novel. Rose loves nothing more than to play pretend in a magical land in her own creation. To her, that world is as real as your own, from her fluffy friends to a terrible evil that lurks at the center of it all. In one night, the line between fantasy and reality will disappear, and ancient hunger will feed again, and Rose will be pulled into a gruesome saga that began centuries before her birth. This is a debut piece of work by Ethan S. Parker and Griffin Sheridan, and the artist, master artist, it says, is Bob Quinn and John J. Hill. So, this is a collection of 1 through 8 of Kill Your Darlings. I can't remember if there's more. But this will be a lot of fun. I think this will be really a nice break from this. So, yeah, if you want to join me in reading Kill Your Darlings, this one's a very short graphic novel, so something that I think anybody could pick up and I think would be really fun to do a buddy reading as. And we're going to be making a nectarine cake. I think this will be a lot of fun. This is going to be a fun month. September's going to be great. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to leave you guys there. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for hanging out with me on this heavier book, and I look forward to hanging out with you guys next month with another blind date with a bake and blind date with a book, which we already know what we're doing, but still a lot of fun. I'm excited. So anyway, until next time, you guys, I hope you have a fantastic day, a fantastic weekend, and actually week, it's Monday, a fantastic week, and I'll see you guys next time, which will be on Thursday, because I'm going to be starting my fall videos. So I'll see you guys on Thursday. Until then, ciao!